Welcome students to my class of BA Part 2 English Literature. I am Dr. Cheena Puri, Associate Professor in English in Government Girls College, Kishanpur, Jaipur. In my last class, which was an introductory lesson, I had started with Paper 1, Poetry and Drama, Section A. And we had discussed about Thomas Gray's elegy written in a country churchyard, the poet's biographical history, and some important literary terms and important background to the poem which are necessary for an understanding of the poem. My lecture, I would be taking up Gray's elegy written in a country churchyard and discussing the poem from critical appreciation point of view and understand the first 7 stanzas of the poem. So we had understood in the last lesson about the biographical history of Thomas Gray and that he was inspired to write an elegy written in a country churchyard after the death of his close friend Richard West. And this elegy is a poem which laments the dead, and though an elegy main theme is on death or a serious subject, but it is noteworthy that elegy written in a country churchyard mourns the death not of great or famous people but of common men. This is a long poem consisting of 32 stanzas and includes the epitaph and has about 128 lines. The structure of the poem can be divided into 2 parts, while the first part, which is the long portion, and it talks about the general theme of mortality, and the last part where the poet meditates on how he should be remembered after his death. So basically the poem by Thomas Gray is a meditation on the inevitability of death, the vanity of ambition of people who are famous and who have a lot of power, and at the same time the universal desire to be loved. So in particular, the poem looks at death as a leveler, an indiscriminate force which makes no distinction between the famous on the one hand and the anonymous common people on the other. So the poem focuses on the idea that in death there is no difference between great and common people. So before moving on to the poem, we need to also understand that Thomas Gray belongs to the graveyard school or the churchyard poetry, which actually involves presentation of melancholic reflection on mortality, which are framed in narratives involving visits to the graveyards and other reminders of death. So basically, this graveyard poetry or the graveyard school is a genre of 18th century British poetry which focuses on death and the grief that comes from loss of loved ones. The graveyard school consisted largely of imitations of Robert Blair's popular long poem of an morbid appeal, The Grave, published in 1743, and also of Edward Young's celebrated blank verse, dramatic rhapsody, Night Thoughts. So actually these poems, why they are called graveyard poetry as the name itself suggests, they express the sorrow and pain of loss and evoke the horror of death's physical manifestations and suggest the transitory, temporary nature of human life, just like a bubble. So the meditative philosophical tendencies of graveyard poetry, they found their fullest expression in the poem which we are going to read now, that is Thomas Gray's An Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard. So this poem is a dignified, gently melancholic elegy celebrating the graves of humble and unknown villagers and suggesting that the lives of rich and poor alike lead but to the grave. So the works of the graveyard school were significant as they were early precursors of the Romantic movement, and this school is also very important because it links the Augustan age and the romantic school. And the focus of this school and the poets in their work is on nature, and death, as the word itself suggests, is the characteristic feature of the graveyard poetry, and also subject like mortality, religion, melancholy. And the settings of these poems is related to the churchyard, the graveyard, and imagery such as of funeral, of night, and birds related to death such as owl, they are evoked in the poem. And what was the importance of this kind of poetry was that it helped in the development of the Gothic novel periods. So with this we come to stanza 1 of the poem. So let's read it. The curfew tolls the knell of parting day. The lowing herd winds slowly over the lea. The ploughman homeward plods his weary way and leaves the world darkness and to me. So here the persona is in a scene which is of a countryside, and the poet has introduced in the first line itself an idea of uh, death in the form of the closing of the day when the evening comes and the farmer, after his tiring day, is taking his cattle back home. So the curfew is the evening bell which is rung to announce everybody about the retirement of the day. But the use of the word knell, which is actually the bell rung at the time of death, indicates that how we part from that day, the closing of the day. So the tone is melancholic, and the scene created is of an evening in a countryside where the farmer, the ploughman, is now moving back to his home. And in the last line it says that how the night is slowly setting in and the darkness is spreading slowly, and the poet is left to contemplate on this scene. So the poem invokes the classical idea of memento mori, a Latin phrase which states plainly to all mankind, remember that you must die. So here the poet goes on to wonder if among the lowly people buried in the churchyard there had been any natural poets or politicians whose talent had simply never been discovered or nurtured. So this kind of a poem, in the first stanza the speaker observes these signs of the country day drawing to a close. And the background to this is that Thomas Gray had started composing the verses of this poem by remembering his own visit to the churchyard at Stockpoges. The poem begins with the description of the churchyard at Stockpoges towards the sunset, where the persona alone stands by the graveyard. And we see that the opening of the poem begins with, it is beginning and focusing on the darkness which is spreading slowly, and the silence and the solemn atmosphere, and how the rural scene is brought to our mind. The first line of the poem sets a distinctly somber tone. The curfew bell does not simply ring, it knells. And so through this, Gray reminds us of human motive. The stanza 2 also continues with the same mood and the atmosphere when it states, now fades the glimmering landscape on the sight, and all the air a solemn stillness holds, save where the beetle wheels his droning flight, and drowsy tinkling lull the distant folds. So how slowly, when the night is about to set in and the air has become silent and seriousness is there around, excepting where the beetle which moves around and its wings give out a sound, and the drowsy. So the word drowsy itself reflects that the bells which are tinkling, the cattle they also have been now tired. So the second stanza sustains the somber tone of the first. And the speaker is not mournful but pensive as he describes the peaceful landscape that surrounds him. In the third stanza, this idea is carried forward when the poet says, "Save that from yonder ivy mantled tower, the moping owl does to the moon complain of such as wandering near her secret bower, her ancient solitary reign." So here the bird of the night owl has been evoked, and the hooting of that owl intrudes upon the evening quiet. And we are told that the owl complains. The bird does not mean to grumble but to express sorrow. And so this owl's call is also suggestive of grief. So in the first three stanzas, we can note that at no point in these opening stanzas does Gray directly refer to death or a funeral. Rather, he indirectly creates an atmosphere by describing mournful sounds, and symbols are placed which will further on indicate about the mortality. And in stanza fourth, the poet says, "Beneath those rugged elms, that yew trees is shade, where heaves the turf in many a mouldering heap, each in his narrow cell forever laid, the rude forefathers of the hamlet sleep." So in this fourth stanza, the speaker now draws our attention to the graves in the country churchyard, and we are presented with two potentially conflicting images of death. Line 14 here describes the heaps of earth surrounding the graves, because in order to dig a grave, the earth must necessarily be disrupted. So this is the scene created of a churchyard and all the graveyards, the graves which have been laid for the dead. And the word rude forefathers here refers to the very simple, unsophisticated farmers of the country, of the pastoral. So in the stanza 5, the breezy call of incense breathing morn, the swallow twittering from the straw-built shed, the cock's shrill clarion or the echoing horn, no more shall rouse them from their lowly bed. So now from here there is a departure, that how life and death, they contrast with each other. Because if the forefathers, those now who are lying in their bed of graveyard, are sleeping, sleep of death, the speaker reminds us that they will never again rise from their beds to hear the pleasurable sounds of the country life that while they were living they had to do. So the term lowly beds describes not only the simple, unpretentious, unadorned graves in which the forefathers are buried, but the humble conditions, the poor conditions that they endured when they were alive. So here the simple life of the farmer brought to fore. For them no more the blazing hearth shall burn, or busy housewife ply her evening care. No children run to lisp their sire's return, or climb his knees the envied kiss to share. Again the idea of how the lives of the simple common people used to take place when they were in their full bloom will no more be now there. So some of the pleasures of the dead will be enjoyed. That is the happiness of home, wife, and oft did the harvest to their sickle yield, their furrow oft the stubborn glebe has broke. How jocund did they drive their team afield? How bowed the woods beneath their sturdy stroke. So again, here in this stanza, the poet is describing the livelihood and the activities of the farmers. The dead will not be able to now enjoy the pleasures of plowing their fields each day. So in this stanza, again we find that there are elements both of Augustan and Romantic poetry, and we can note that Gray closely identifies the farmers with the land that they work. So this association of man and nature is suggestive of a romantic nature. So these are the first 7 stanzas which we have studied, and at this point we need to stop and consider some other elements of poetry, that is meter and rhyme scheme, because this would be followed throughout in the poetry in this poem. So we find that each stanza consists of 4 lines, and each line is written in iambic pentameter, which has 5 pairs of syllables for a total of 10 syllables, and it is called a heroic quatrain. Quatrain means 4 lines, and as I've told that it is written in iambic pentameter. But what is that? So an iamb is an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable, and pentameter here means, penta means 5, so there are 5 iambs in each line, as you can note in the colored syllables which have been highlighted. The curfew tolls the knell of parting day, and this is how the iambic pentameter follows in each stanza. We also note that the rhyme scheme here is A B A B, that is, the first line rhymes with the third, parting day, weary way, and the second line rhymes with the fourth, that is, over the lea and to me. So this would be the main meter and rhyme scheme elements of poetry. Also, whenever we read a poem, we need to focus on the different figures of speech used in the poem, and this poem is rich in various kinds of figure of speech, but at this point of time let us focus on 2, that is alliteration, that is repetition of the consonant sound which are closely placed with each other, like in line 3 and line 19. Plowman homeward plods his weary way. So plowman, plods, weary and way, they are all repetition of the consonant sounds with P, P and W, W. And in line 19, the cock says shrill clarion. So C, C sound is repeated. So this is called alliteration. Another important figure of speech here used is transferred epithet. So in the line 3 where the poet writes weary way, the adjective weary or tired is shifted from the plowman who is tired after his day to the way. The way cannot be tired, it's the plowman who is tired, but the adjective has been transferred and placed before the way. So the way is not weary, although epithet is shifted. So these are the figures of speech, and there are many more which we will come across while we read the poem further on. And with this we come to end of lesson 2, and we continue studying the rest of the stanzas in our next class. So thank you.